Welcome to Weeds and Wilds Conversation. Joining us today is Modupe, a certified dementia practitioner and founder of the consulting firm, The Mindful Approach. With more than a decade of experience, she specializes in helping families and care teams navigate dementia with compassion and practicality. Modupe is also the co-host of the podcast, Dementia Disrupted, and a professional singer, mother, and wife. Please welcome Modupe.
So my background, I'm originally from Richmond, California. And so I started out as a activities director for a PACE program, which stands for Plan of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. And so at that time, I noticed that the seniors around me seemed to have forgetfulness, seemed to have falls and things like that. I wasn't really sure what to call what I was witnessing. And very shortly after, I realized that it was dementia. So I went through the Rosalind Carter Institute and I got certified as an sorry, I went through the Rosalind Carter Institute and I became a certified dementia practitioner. And so through them, I feel like it really gave me the foundation to understand and put a face to what I was seeing in front of me. And sorry, put a name to what I was seeing. And so I started to understand, okay, dementia causes these types of effects like memory loss, right? And so it really started my journey on starting to dig in and understand more. So this was like well over 10 years ago. So after about 2 years in that role, there was a need for a memory care center within the organization. And so I was placed in the position of memory care director, but I actually opened up
Okay.
the memory care. So
Okay.
yeah, so I was involved in implementation of safety, design, dementia friendly design, I should say. Also, making sure that I hired my team. I trained them on what to look for when it comes to behaviors. I trained them on what the dining experience should look like and feel like. I also trained them on our operational workflows. The way that things need to be in place is in such a way that is predictable for the person who's living with dementia. And so, all of those components, before we opened, we ran it. We did role play as if we were the ones living in their shoes so that we can see and feel what they may be experiencing. And of course, it's never going to be the exact same, but I wanted them to realize how their decisions impact the people that we're supporting. And so we did a soft launch, which quickly turned into a full launch because the program was running so well. And so, yeah, that was some time ago.
Yes.
And so since then, I've opened my own company, The Mindful Approach, where I apply some of those similar concepts and experiences to larger organizations and families.
Okay. So what type of background did you have that afforded you the ability to go and just basically open up a whole nother center? Because you were starting, you were there as an aide. Did you work in any other capacity or receive any other like admin type of training that or did it just come to you naturally?
It actually came, I don't want to say naturally, but kind of. I am the type of
Okay.
person who knows how to figure it out when I have a challenge in front of me. And so I feel like I had a lot of the experience. Even prior to that, I worked with children who had behavioral challenges and were on the spectrum. And
Okay.
so I feel like that helped to prep me. I also have some administrative background as well. And so, yeah, so when this came about, I feel like that lived experience pushed me more into this role. Like, I felt like
Okay.
it became a calling for me because everybody
Mhm.
doesn't like to deal with dementia. They may not understand it and they just kind of walk away or try to deal with it the best that they can. But I realized that there was something underneath this? Why are so many seniors around me and really of a very similar demographic experiencing dementia? And
So the
so
facility that you were working at, it wasn't specific to dementia. It was a memory care facility. And you took it upon yourself to go and research and find out what was going on. And then did you have to introduce something new to them? Or when they opened the memory care program, was that already something that was underway? Even though you had did the training, like what involvement do you feel like you're getting the dementia training? Do you feel like it had some involvement to, some type of involvement with the direction that that company went into?
yeah, I feel like it may have helped because in my former role, I was an activities director, and it was not at a memory center. The memory care center did not exist for this company.
Okay.
So I opened the first memory care center for them. Yes. And so I think that it helped because my perspective on dementia and how we should approach the people we were working with was different than my peers. And so I think that in that regard, it helped me maybe stand out when it came to applying for the role and showing that I had genuine interest and a genuine level of experience and expertise that I was developing at that time.
Okay.
So yes. So since then, I have earned other certifications, such as the Dementia through the Dementia Connection Institute. I also teach the Dementia Connection model, which was created by Dr. Jennifer Stelter. I'm a certified dementia practitioner with the National Council of Certified Dementia Practitioners, and I'm also a trainer through them as well. So lots of credentials, lots of certifications.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, but that all came over time, gradually.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, in terms of opening up the memory care center, it was kind of like it was clear I knew what I was doing when it came to dementia, right? And then, so the people around me were looking for more of a content expert for us to open this up successfully. We involved donors, which continued year after year to support us financially, and stakeholders were in place as well that helped us open up our doors, and is still standing today.
Okay. Okay. And so for people who don't really know much about dementia, can you just speak to that a little bit? And I want to touch on the like both Alzheimer's and dementia because there's a huge conversation about them being different from each other. But from my understanding, Alzheimer's is under like the dementia umbrella, and there's also like a lot of different types of dementia. So I wanted to see if you can kind of just briefly share in a nutshell what dementia is in itself, and then maybe break down the different types of them, or maybe even the most common types of dementia that would be beneficial for people to be able to learn and identify.
Sure. So, dementia, as you mentioned, is an overarching term that
Mhm.
describes a series of symptoms. So, it's just like if somebody said, "Oh, I have a fever," it's like, why do you have a fever? Is it because of COVID? Is it because you have a common cold? Do you have a virus that's come on? And so, dementia, think of it as like a fever, right? In that regard. So,
Yeah.
it's a symptom of the problem. The problem could be Alzheimer's. The problem could be frontotemporal dementia that is causing these types of the symptoms, which you would overall call dementia. You could have Lewy bodies dementia, right? They're all different types. And so with Alzheimer's dementia, you start to see a change in the person's ability to remember. Their memory is impacted. And so you also notice that it's harder for them to do those day to day things that they would typically do. For example, if you had a fever, the doctor will want to figure out, why do you have a fever? Is it because you have a bacterial infection? Is it because you have COVID? Do you have a cold? Is it nasal issues? You can have a fever for many reasons, right? And so that's very similar to dementia. You can have the word dementia, which is memory loss, changes in ability to speak, thinking, clarity, ability to do some things on your own that were easier before. That's overall describing someone who has dementia, right? But it's
Okay.
not breaking it down into the different types. So, Alzheimer's dementia is the most common form of dementia. It affects about two-thirds of Americans. And in Alzheimer's dementia, you'll see a noticeable change in memory loss. And then you'll
Okay.
also notice that it's difficult for the person to do tasks that were easier for them before. For example, making tea or a pot of rice, for example. Um, with frontotemporal dementia, that's something that comes about as a result of it basically impacts your frontal lobe and your temporal lobe of your brain. So
Okay.
you're not able to do certain tasks, like you may see an issue with balance. You may see an issue with being able to convey an idea, right? Or
Mhm.
with vascular dementia, that typically comes about after somebody has had a stroke or there's restriction to the blood flow in your blood vessels. So as a
Okay.
result, your brain is impacted. um, you're not able to um, reply to certain things. Like if you were to just speak to me now, and I'm like delayed, I'm not able to speak back to you, but I heard
Okay.
everything that you said, and I understand everything that you said. My brain
Yeah.
is just trying to catch up and respond. And
Okay.
so,
Okay.
and then with Lewy body dementia, which is another common one that Robin Williams had actually, that one is
Okay.
marked by having hallucinations as well as like body tremors, as you would see in Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, okay, that explains a lot. For signs, like when do you think a person should go and have someone screened for Alzheimer's? I mean, yeah, for dementia, Alzheimer's. And specifically, I know someone that recently did that, and the doctor gave a paper that you're circling things, and it was a very just like generic form, and the person left like, boom, I told you guys I don't have dementia, and I just left it alone because I felt like it should have been a little bit more of an in-depth screening process. So when should they get them screened? And then also, what are your thoughts on the screening process? And of course, I'm not asking you to like speak against what a physician is doing, but like, what do you know of like effective screening processes?
Mhm. One of the first signs is just noticing that it seems increasingly difficult for them to engage and do tasks that they did before. For example, as people get older, look, even younger, sometimes you may be in a large parking lot and you forget where you parked your car, but you can somehow piece it together and say,
Yeah.
oh, I parked over here. Let me go to my
Yeah.
car. But when somebody comes to a point where they don't remember where they've parked their car and they really can't find it, like to the point they need to call someone,
Mhm.
um, that's one sign. Also, seeing changes in the way that they're able to do small things that they did before, like boiling water.
Mm.
There was someone in my experience who put a electric kettle onto a gas stove to heat her water for her food.
Wow.
And so those types of things start to happening back to executive functioning. Also comprehension is impacted as well. And so yeah, if somebody's starting to see those types of signs, like you just know this person is not the person that I knew before. Small things are becoming difficult. They may even start to notice themselves at the early stages that,
Okay.
hey, something is wrong. I feel like I'm forgetting a lot. Well, I will say, I mean, just going back to the physician's ability to diagnose it, yes, they can find it out. However, a lot of doctors don't have a ton of experience with the behavioral, how dementia presents, right? And so they do what they know to do best, but that's where it comes at advocating for the person who you think may have dementia comes in. So besides doing the battery tests for dementia, it sounds like maybe they did something like a PHQ-9 or another type of test. Um, so in that situation, you also want to advocate to see, does this person have a UTI? Because that can mimic some symptoms of dementia. That may
Wow.
mimic, yeah, that may mimic forgetfulness, agitation, things like that, changes in sleep pattern. And yeah, that's
Is that just for the elderly community or for anyone?
it's more frequent in the elderly, but there is something called younger onset dementia, which starts before age of 65.
And then that those are the people that would be affected in that way by a UTI?
They could
People
be.
that have early onset? Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yes, they could be.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's something to look into. There's also other tests that can be done. There's blood work now. There's MRIs that can be done to, or sorry, CT scans that can be done to recognize whether or not there's actual Alzheimer's in the brain while the person is still living. So, those are some things that the person who may think there's Alzheimer's present or dementia present can ask for, besides just
Okay.
the regular test. Yeah.
Okay. And it shows in the brain because it's a disease. Is that the reason why they're able to see it on a CT scan?
Yeah, there's so when someone has Alzheimer's disease, parts of the brain are literally covered up by something called towels, like TAU, towels and tangles. So it
Okay.
looks like plaque over the brain.
Oh,
And
wow.
so if you were to look at it, like a healthy brain is nice and full and firm,
Mhm.
but a brain that's impacted by Alzheimer's disease, you'll see gaps and holes in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Huh. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. And
This is a
then,
lot. Yeah, there's a lot to it because, and I'm so happy again to be having this conversation because it seems from the outside looking in or from a person that's uneducated on it, it seems like it's just like a mental disorder type of thing when a person has that, but it's much deeper. And I think it would give people a little bit more compassion if you have the education, especially here, understanding it's a disease and that it can actually put those things you said, towels like on the brain and things like that. That's like, it's pretty sad, but education is key. So for a person that doesn't have access to maybe a care facility and they're at home and it's the beginning process, like what are things that you can speak to that can make one, the more common types of dementia, make them I don't want to say easier, but make the transition from, okay, this is my mom and now all of a sudden this is my mom with dementia. What are tools and techniques and some foolproof things that people can do at home while they're in the process of trying to like get proper care and things like that?
I would say the number one thing is to not try to correct them. If you see that they are saying something like, "Oh, I've never been to Mexico," but you guys went to Mexico 2, 3 years ago. Don't correct them because first of all, they don't remember. And then second of all, it's scary. Imagine you never thought you went to Mexico with your mom, right? And then, or say you're the mom. And then they're telling you, like, no, we went 2 years ago. Remember? Like, we went swimming and then we went walking on the beach and we had pina coladas. It may be very scary for you realizing in the earlier stage that maybe you really don't remember that. It puts
Mm,
you in a state of panic, right? And so we don't want to do that. I would say to keep track of what they are saying, keep track of the patterns that you're noticing, how long is happening, and then just kind of listen and then get creative in your responses. For example, if it's like, say it's more moderate, moderate stage, I would say, like mid stage. And the person, you can tell they can't really drive anymore. Like they've hit the fire hydrant on the sidewalk, right? They have hit something in front of them that normally they would have seen, a stop sign or something like that. So the proprioception starts to change, meaning they can no longer see, like in your brain, you have proprioception, trying to explain it in an easy way. And so basically, you're able to know where things are in space and time without necessarily staring straight at it, right? You
Okay.
can see it from your peripheral vision. But imagine putting blockers on. If you put your hands like this, you can't see what's next to you, right? To your left or to your right. And so, if you're noticing things like that are happening, you may have to take the keys from the
Yeah.
car for safety reasons. And
Yeah.
so, it may come up, hey, where's my keys? You may be the bad guy. But I would
Mm-hmm.
say get creative, give them some keys, but make sure it doesn't work for that car. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
take the battery out of the car and you see them trying and you're with them in it. You're like, man, I'm sorry it's not working,
Okay.
but let me drive you instead. And so
Mm.
that way you're getting around what the issues are, you're keeping everyone safe, and you are also giving them the dignity that they need as well as they're transitioning to.
Okay, okay, that's a really strong point because I can imagine it would probably have a real negative effect on the brain to be startled in that way of thinking like, oh my God, am I going crazy? Because that's the
Mhm.
first thing they'll think is they're not going to think like, oh, they're not going to think it's a disease. They're going to just think they're going crazy or whatever the case is. So thank you for sharing that point because I feel like a lot that's what you hear mostly people saying, oh yeah, mom, this is your grandson, this is your nephew. Do you think they should like not even do that type of thing? Like don't remind them of who people are. Don't just whatever they're saying, just let them say it. And then when they are, normal or when they, I don't know if you would even call it normal because I just remember with a grandparent, it was like one moment she just didn't know who I was. And then the next moment, she just was like asking me questions like nothing ever happened. And it was confusing because it would be like within the same moment. So do you
Yes.
just let them be in that space and then wait for them to come to, or when is it okay to remind them, or is it even worth it to try and remind them?
I don't think it's a good idea to try and remind them. There are some moments of lucidity with the
Okay.
disease as the disease is progressing. And so, just going back to the way that it works with the towels and basically the plaques in your brain, imagine you have, let me give you an example. Okay, imagine you have a box, right? And in that box is your charger for your phone. You know it's there and you want to communicate and open up the box so that you can get the power to your phone. But since it's locked, there's no way that that can happen. You may
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit of battery left on your phone so you can communicate a little bit, but at some point you won't be able to. So that's what's happening with Alzheimer's disease. Those messages that would typically communicate to you, this is your granddaughter, that would typically communicate to you, this is a fork, you use it to eat, right? Those messages won't connect anymore at some point, but it goes
Mm.
through a progression. And so that's why you do see those moments of lucidity because sometimes it gets through, right? But maybe it takes longer as well. So yeah, so back to your question, I think there's ways to strategically jog the memory. Like I saw this TikTok video where I feel like this woman did it masterfully. She talked about her dad to her dad. And so she was like, oh, there's this guy, he's a teacher. I believe she showed him pictures as well. And she was like talking about all these memories with her dad, but it was specific to his teaching career and the way he touched the lives of the students. And
Okay.
so as he was listening, he was interested in what she was saying. And then she said, do you know anybody like that? And he said, is it me? And she's like,
Oh,
yes, it's you. So
oh,
it
that's
did.
really sweet.
Yeah, so it didn't give him pressure to try to remember. It's like you don't want to force somebody into a situation where you know their memory is impacted and you're asking them to do something they may not be able to do in that moment. So it's normal for us to just be like, don't you know this person? This is your granddaughter or whatever. But it's like that can be really hard for them. So,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
So with the vascular, and I'm just kind of going back a little bit with the vascular dementia, what are some of the things that could trigger that again? If you mentioned that, I'm sorry if you did, but what are some of the things that could trigger vascular dementia?
A stroke can trigger that.
Oh, a stroke. Okay.
Mhm.
And is that just like the only thing, or are there other common health issues that you know of that can trigger that type?
That's the most common
The
one.
most common one?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what do those symptoms look like? Are they the same as what an Alzheimer's type of symptom would be?
There's some similarities. There's delay in the
Mhm.
way that you get the messages, and then there's also slow transit speech. So, like, if you're like the way you just asked me a question now, I may have heard you and I know what you said, but my brain is piecing it together. So, I might
Okay.
sit there for a while like this and then answer your
Okay.
question. So, those are some things you will see as well. And so it's important to, back to the person living at home, it's important to not fill the space with asking additional questions because that's something else to
Yeah.
process. Just let them take their time and respond to you. Give them reassurance, give them good eye contact as you would anybody. And also, I want to tell people don't baby talk people like living
Yeah.
with dementia. Because I see a lot of people try to do you understand what I just said? That high pitch. First of
Yeah.
all, with the high pitch sound, they probably can't. It makes it worse for them to try to understand what you're saying. And
Yeah.
then talking to them so slow. In their mind, with someone who has vascular dementia, it's like, girl, I heard you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get my words out. And they may not know it's taking longer, but their brain is just trying to get it out. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
okay. Wow. So this is a lot of information. And I know you work with, you said frontline workers, but do you have any services for the people that are not under that category? Like, because I feel like more people need to have this information. Because typically, when people have a loved one, especially if the family is big, it's probably a lot of people that are helping to care for
Yes.
the person. What can people do to like get their families educated, or like what is the most streamlined type of way to get this information to people if they're not able to contract with you, or if they, because how does it work? Like, do they have to, is it direct pay, is it insurance? How does it work with getting you on board with families to work with them?
Right now is direct pay for consultations. I do 1 hour scenario based consultations.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
But if somebody needed other information, they can also follow me on TikTok and my Facebook business page at The Mindful Approach. My TikTok is Navigating Dementia, and I put a whole bunch of tips on there about these types of scenarios that are common. People can feel
Mhm.
free to send me a message and ask follow up questions about what
Okay.
I'm presenting or other questions that they may have.
Mhm. Can you elaborate on the podcast a little bit? I know that, at I kind of said like what it's about, but who is the podcast for, and what types of topics can a person expect to hear if they tune in to listen?
So the podcast is, I think it will be really appealing to family caregivers. I
Okay.
also think it will be extremely helpful for professional caregivers as well to gain some insights on the perspective of the families. So I'm co-hosting the podcast with Maggie Memory, who was misdiagnosed with dementia in her early 30s, and she is now an older woman. Thank God she decided to do all that she can to find out everything she can about dementia. She has spoken across the country. She has played every role you can think of when it comes to healthcare. And so her and I are bringing two different perspectives from two different generations, and we are showing those who, not only the caregivers who are already in it, but people who may be kind of wondering, does my mom or dad have Alzheimer's disease or some
Mhm.
form of dementia?
Yeah.
And I just want people to know that if you don't have somebody in your family yet, or you don't know somebody who has experienced dementia, I have a feeling at some point you will. If it's not
Hmm.
going to be personal, it will be a secondary relationship, right? So it's really good to start listening to these things now, preparing now,
Yeah.
and so that way are having informed discussions. Over
Hmm.
132,000 people in Contra Costa County alone have Alzheimer's disease. So that
Wow,
just
that's
tells
that's
you,
a lot. Hmm.
yeah, that goes to show you why it's so important to tap into these resources. So we'll be talking about financial planning for around the caretaking of dementia. I've also spoken to a husband and wife couple who are taking care of both of the wife's parents who have dementia. We have also spoken to a doctor, a gynecologist specifically, who was taking care of her mother full time who has dementia and the disrespect that she's experienced. We also
Wow.
talk amongst ourselves about caregiving. Is it okay to be selfish as a caregiver? My co-host and I have very different views on that. And so, it's a bit of a debate. And I think that it fits a lot of people from all different categories who are dealing with dementia in some capacity.
Yeah. What about Q&As? Will you guys do that on there? Like maybe take calls, or have like a place where people can submit questions and maybe a certain segment you guys can like read off Q&As. Will you do any of that type of stuff, or is it just going to be like, certain whatever topics you guys are deciding to discuss? Because I'm asking
The
because I think that would be really helpful. I'm just thinking about people that are caring for persons with dementia, just all these different things that pop up, and it may not be, sometimes you feel like questions are stupid. You don't want to bring it to the doctor, or you just like have some, or maybe sometimes people need to vent. That's another thing too. And I think, yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm rambling right now, but my question, will you have
no.
that type of thing on the podcast?
We have not actually discussed having that on our podcast. I don't think it's a bad idea, especially because both of us have some level of social media presence and interaction,
Yeah.
and we see things that do come up, and we get DMs from people, on my TikTok, navigating dementia. I talk about different practical tools that families can use. And so sometimes I do get questions. So I don't think it's a bad idea to not only answer the question for the individual, but also bring that to our platform.
Okay. So, I've asked you, I feel like I've asked you, some very interesting questions and got a lot of info, but do you feel like there's anything else that I did not ask you that I should have? I do have one quick question though, while
Uh-huh.
you're thinking. What is it about dementia that causes death?
Oh, good question. So people tend to think that dementia itself led to the person's demise,
Hmm.
but that's not 100% true.
Okay.
It is the things that come along with that that lead to the demise. So let's go back to Alzheimer's, for example. If you have holes in your brain, it's impacting your functioning. Eventually, it's going to impact other parts of your body, right? You may have, if your brain can't tell you, pick up your legs and walk, and you're falling frequently, maybe you have a trauma to the head from the falls, right? Or
Okay.
maybe you are, when it comes to the more like the later stage or the severe stage of dementia, you are laying in the bed all the time. You're not able to be as mobile. People don't understand how important connection and exercise is when it comes
Yeah.
to this disease. And so there are other, we call them comorbidities, that impact the person's demise, not just
Okay.
the disease itself. So,
Okay.
because other things are shutting down. And a lot
Mhm.
of times people don't make it to the end stages of dementia because something else has taken them, like a stroke, another stroke, right? Or a heart attack, things like that can happen.
Okay. Okay.
No, that was a really good question. But yeah, I mean, I think that one additional thing that people should know is when it comes to appetite as well, I know that people with dementia start to want to eat sweets a little bit more.
Hmm.
I feel like it's okay to let them have some sweets, but you can get creative with that too.
Okay.
Make a smoothie or, make something that has honey in it versus just raw sugar. Incorporate those dark leafy greens to keep up the brain health and give them the antioxidants they need as much as you can. If it needs to be in the form of some type of bar or donut, then do it. But don't be too pushy about forcing them to eat chicken if they really don't want it. Some other
Okay.
things that may be happening is that as people get older, their skin starts to thin, right? And that includes your gum line. If they're wearing dentures, it may be hard to chew and you don't know because they can't communicate that to you. Take them to the dentist. I always tell people to be a good detective when it comes to dementia because you're helping them figure out things that they can no longer figure out for themselves. So always
Yeah.
put yourself in their shoes. If it was me and I had a canker sore in my mouth, and it was hard for me to eat like harder, I don't know, rice or noodles or whatever it is, I may go to the dentist and just get checked out. With someone with dementia, they might not let you look all in their mouth and figure it out. Like, just,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's good to rule it out, right? And in the
Hmm.
meantime, give them things that they can tolerate to eat or that you see they're interested in. But try to find ways to sneak in the other protein and carbs that they need to function throughout the
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was very the bit about like the skin and the gum lining. I would have never imagined that in a million years. That's really good to know. So that
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. And they wouldn't know, they just know that it's hard to chew and they
Hmm.
can't really communicate that. So you just like you said, being a detective and watching them paying attention. I guess that would help too with people and the frustration that comes with it. And that's one of the things that touches me the most, watching people be frustrated. I just saw a video where they had a dementia fight club in a nursing home, and for the life of me,
Mm.
I just couldn't understand like what would like what's going on with people. And so if people are able to do that type of thing, I can only imagine if you're like caring for someone. And so I don't know, that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Hey.
What are some things you do for yourself? Because you also have another career. You have your music career. You have a small child, a pet. What are things that you do for yourself to be able to balance this type of work? Because I feel like when you're working with families, especially in this capacity, I think this type of work can be kind of heavy because of the different things that come along with it. So I'm just wondering, and it's always nice to hear like what career women are doing to keep themselves like balanced out. I know we hear the whole work life conversation. I
Yeah.
personally don't think that there's like a balance. There's a balance. I think it's just like one cohesive thing that you just have to make work together. But maybe that's not your story. So what would you say?
Honestly, I believe self-care is really important. Um, but it's not always big for me, only because I am building, right? I'm building my company. I've recently pivoted from, working for the organization I was working for over 10 years. So one, I feel like I was built to do this. I feel like
Okay.
this is part of my purpose. And
Okay.
so the difference between the work I was doing, although there were some similarities, now that I'm in it for myself and for people that I can touch directly, I I feel like I'm energized by that. I'm the type of person who, if you give me some type of project and I've never heard of it before, I will figure it out. I am the research
Okay.
queen. I am I love stuff like that. So yeah, I think for me it's smaller right now. Taking a
Okay.
walk. I love being outside, taking our dogs on a walk, enjoying
Yeah.
a good meal with my husband and my son,
Hmm.
singing with my son, and then also getting sleep. That is my number one.
Okay. Okay.
People
Okay.
sleep on sleep.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
For
yes,
sure.
and then also what gives me reprieve is having a good conversation with somebody I'm close to because I love to laugh. Besides singing, that's one of my favorite things to do is crack up. And so that is my right now my go-to. And then I have a couple trips coming up as well.
Okay, okay, okay. Do you have anything else you want to leave us with? Anything you want to say before we close out?
Yeah, I think that everybody should really tune in to Dementia Disrupted once we are up and running. So go ahead and subscribe now to our channel, Dementia Disrupted. It is me and Maggie Memory as my co-host. And she was misdiagnosed with dementia in her early 30s. So they thought she had younger onset dementia. It ended up being something else. And since then, she has been an amazing advocate for dementia. She has worked every role you can think of when it comes to caregiver, administrator, everything to make sure that she knows all aspects of what is happening. And so, very honored to be doing this with her. We're different generations talking about a very real disease that impacts us over many generations and it will continue. So I think it's important for people to tune in and hear the real about dementia.
All right.
So,
All right. Well,
yes.
thank you so much again for your time, and I will be in touch, okay?
Okay. Thank you.